Hi guys, welcome back. So I'm joined by the wonderful Cheryl. She's the owner of this wonderful space called Red Diamond Yoga based in West LA. So if you can, come to the studio, join us for your practice. Otherwise, you're at home and you're practicing, so that counts. All right, so we're gonna work into a posture that's a hip opener, so single pigeon. And we're gonna show you in stages what this pose is really about, because what we tend to see are students sitting on the knee, and that can be a really precarious place to be on your knee and overstressing your knee ligaments. You want to remember before we get into it, when you are doing a hip opener, this is about finding range of motion around the hips. And if you are someone who has really tight hips, you might fall into what I like to call the escape valve. You skip the posture. So just notice what you tend to do and see if you can find the stages, because when you work into your hips, you are working into your place of fluidity, of creativity and procreativity as well. But it's also a place where we store a lot of emotions. So give yourself time to breathe through the postures. Ideally a good 8 to 10 breaths of softening in and really finding the length on the exhales and releasing out anything you're holding around your hips that you don't need. So in this hip opener, we're really stretching around the glutes, the piriformis, the IT band. All of that area gets a good stretch. So we're going to come into downward facing dog. As we come into downward facing dog, we're going to go through 3 different variations. So the first one we see is the left leg goes up and then the knee goes forward and the knee is going straight forward and the student folds. Yeah. And right now, you start to think that you're getting a stretch in the hip, but actually this poor left knee is taking the brunt of the posture because there was no hip opener. So you want to think when you're doing this posture, the knee needs to be wider than the hip for it to be a hip opener. There's that external rotation, especially for the variation that we're finding today. So we're going to curl the toes under again, and we're slowly going to come back to downward facing dog. Second variation that we see a lot, right, Cheryl, is that the left leg goes up, and then from here you're going to take the knee towards the wrist, and then you're going to take your right ankle and move the shin forward. And as you take your right hand and move the shin forward, that's it. You think, I've got to get that shin parallel to the short edge of the mat, and then you hinge and fold. And as you hinge and fold, you're sat on your left hip. And this is what happens. So this can really, really stress the lower back and definitely stress that left knee. Now, we're going to come out of this variation. The reason why it's not so good to just take that left shin up is because this is a hinge joint, yeah? So really you're working from the hinge and not the rotation of your hip. I could just sit here. Here I am feeling like, wow, I'm in the deepest variation of the pose, but I'm not. I just did it from my hinge. So now we're going to try and find it a little bit more mindfully. So we're going to take the left leg up, and now we're going to take the left knee. We're going to slow this down. Left knee towards the left wrist, left ankle towards the right wrist. Nice. Then we're going to take the right hand and ground the left ankle down. There. And then as we ground it down, we're going to work from the right leg, which is the hip flexor leg, which is really going to help and assist you opening up the hip. From here, Cheryl's going to curl the back toes under. As she curls the back toes under, she walks the right leg back. And as she walks the right leg back, that's it. She takes the outer left hip with her, all the while keeping this left ankle very stable. Then as she levels the buttock flesh, she starts to let the right hip come forward, and now she'll hinge and fold. And you want to think that this right leg is very much in line with your right hip. What can happen is the right leg can go too far out to the right, so you just need to walk it over so it's more in line with the hip. You might find that the left buttock is elevated. If this happens to you, it's better to put a blanket under your left thigh because it takes the pressure off your left knee. And now what we're finding here is a really nice hip opener and a happy sacrum. The sacrum is more or less level, the right waist is pulling forward, and the outer right hip is moving down, which really starts to stretch these outer hip muscles. And then you'll give yourself a good 8 to 10 breaths in the shape, feeling the inner right groin spin up, the outer left hip pull back, and the size of the waist pull forward. Your spine is in extension, so you're not really rounding from the spine here. There's an offering from your heart, even in the forward fold. And then from here, you curl the toes under and move back to downward facing dog, where you might just want to shake it out and let it go and kind of get some oxygenated blood moving into that area. Exactly. And then you'll extend the leg, lower down, and you'll probably take the second side. For this case, we're just going to sit down. So we hope that was helpful. So, when you're working with this, guys, again, first variation, you want to think, how can I not sit in the escape valve, right? How can I not sit in the shin? How can I actually take the knee towards the left wrist, take the ankle down, and then anchor that ankle down, work from your hip flexors. Curl the back toes under, draw the left hip back. Curl the back toes under, draw the left hip back. And then you'll feel it when you can't go anymore. Then if the buttock is elevated, you put a blanket under the buttock to take the stress out of the left knee. Let the right hip and right waist come forward and then begin to hinge and forward fold. What can happen is this can draw in. So that's why it's a good way to kind of anchor it down, find that point, and then you give yourself some time to breathe into the shape. All right, so hope that was helpful. Try it at home, try with a blanket. You might notice your butt is really elevated, maybe even a bolster, maybe even a block. All right, see you down the yoga road.